Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Auto Bravado channel. Today, I'm here with this 2015 Mitsubishi Outlander with all-wheel drive. Let's get into the review. So, the Mitsubishi Outlander was introduced into the North American market all the way back in 2001. And this specific example is in its third generation from the 2015 model year, and it's in the top-of-the-line GT trim, which comes with a 3-liter V6 up front and all-wheel drive. So, before we get into the more important details of the Mitsubishi Outlander, I just have to talk about this vehicle's presence all around the world. It's sold everywhere from the Philippines, New Zealand, Mexico, Alaska, and so on. It's sold with various powertrains and transmissions, everything from a 2.2-liter inline-4 diesel to a 5-speed manual transmission. Before we move on to the inside of the Mitsubishi Outlander, I just have to point out the design, which is really unique, especially when you consider it's in the top-of-the-line trim. There's chrome pieces everywhere, dark plastic. I mean, it's really interesting how they designed this car. It's somewhat proportional, but it's very unique to the Outlander. I don't like to touch too much on design, but I just have to point out how overly complicated and busy this entire front fascia is. I mean, the silver grille is way too complicated, and especially down here, there's so many vents. I mean, it's unbelievable. To move on to the other details, I just have to point out this specific trim of the Outlander is very unique to the United States market. That's partly due to the all-wheel drive system and the powertrain, which is a 3-liter V6, which is the largest displacement motor you can get in the Outlander. So one last thing before we get inside, I just have to point out the key. It's actually a really nice key, which is really surprising considering this Mitsubishi's price point. It's around $26,000 when fully equipped on the GT trim. Really nice to see that they've given that bit of attention to detail, something you're going to be touching pretty much every time you get in the car. We're gonna get inside. So upon entrance, it's actually a relatively spacious interior, and that's partly due to the way they've utilized the space and especially the dashboard. It's a relatively compact dashboard considering it's an SUV, but nonetheless, they've used the space very well. Even though this is the GT trim, they do state on Mitsubishi's website that this is a leather trim. I believe it's actually a vinyl and or leatherette material to save cost. I mean, leather is relatively expensive compared to vinyl, and in some cases the vinyl is actually going to be more durable than the leather. It's a relatively basic interior, and I just have to point out at this price point you're getting so much car for the money. It might not have the build quality of a Toyota or, I mean, the luxury of a BMW or something like that, but at this price point there's not much that can beat it. Here's something I just have to point out. It's absolutely hilarious. You go to adjust the climate control buttons, and believe it or not, it sounds like a microwave, like you're putting your microwavable dinner in, cooking it up for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. That's absolutely hilarious. Every time you touch the climate control button, that's hilarious. So as far as cabin materials feel, I mean, it's relatively dated and cheap considering this specific example came out in 2015. I mean, this was the just the startup of the modernization of infotainment technology. I mean, gauge screen, I mean, the cluster, everything like that. And it already feels relatively dated. One more thing before we move to the rear seats, I just have to point out, this is absolutely insane. Mitsubishi has installed paddle shifters in here, which is absolutely unbelievable. You obviously have a 3-liter V6. Not exactly the power you would want, but you can play with that motor as much as you want. These paddle shifters let you do just that. They let you pick which gear you want to be in pretty much all the time. It doesn't govern you that much. I mean, it's awesome. It'll be really cool to see how that is on the drive. All right, so now we're moving into the rear seats of the Mitsubishi Outlander. And one thing I have to point out, the price tag of around $26,000 for the top-of-the-line GT trim. And that $26,000 price tag is definitely apparent when you think, oh my gosh, I'm getting so much of a car. But you do have the continuation of the vinyl seats in the rear, but you have virtually no creature comforts black here. I mean, obviously there's these gray plastics and whatnot. You know, it's not as good as the front, but there's still seats back here. So it may not not look like it, but this is a 3-row SUV, and I'll just take a look at the back seats here. It folds forward. You have a little step right here. You can hop into the rear seats of the Mitsubishi Outlander. So now I'm gonna put the seats back, and there's no room back here. You are going to be putting 2 small children back here. You have 2 small rear seats. One thing I have to point out, these are the absolutely weirdest headrests you'll ever see. They're bent, they are long, and it's very weird. And as far as creature comforts go in the back here, you have pretty much none, except this little cutout here for, I don't know, a pencil. And then you've got 2 cup holders over here, but there's pretty much nothing back here. Well, Mitsubishi still wants you to have fun, even though you're in the 3rd row. They've installed a sub right here. It's huge, and it takes up a good amount of the rear trunk area. All right, so now I'm going to take you into the back of the Mitsubishi Outlander. Automatically rises up for you to access your relatively small cargo capacity with the 3 rows fully up. Again, I want to point out that sub takes up about half the 3rd row and about half of this little storage compartment back here, but you do have ample space on both sides and a little pop-up cubby where you can put all your belongings. All right, so now we're getting under the hood of the Mitsubishi Outlander GT. This is the top of the line trim, so it deserves the top of the line motor. It's the 3-liter V6, which makes 224 horsepower and 215 pound-feet of torque. It's all connected to a 6-speed torque converter automatic transmission, which goes through its 60/40 split all-wheel drive system. And yes, this is a smaller displacement V6, but it is connected to an all-wheel drive system, and yes, this is an SUV as well, so it really begs the question, is the fuel economy good or bad? Well, I have to tell you, it does quite well. 20 miles per gallon city and 28 miles per gallon highway for a total combined 25. And again, those 2 extra gears, 5th and 6th, are the overdrive gears, which really aren't that usable. They're just meant for cruising on the highway and nothing else. Yeah, this is a relatively compact engine, surprisingly. I mean, the intake manifold right there, I mean, it looks actually really nice. It's not painted or covered up or anything. I mean, you can actually all see it right here. Really cool. Well, we've taken an in-depth look at this 2015 Mitsubishi Outlander. Now it's time to take it out on the road for a drive. All right, here we go. We're gonna take the Mitsubishi Outlander on a drive. Here we go, we're gonna start it up. All right, seatbelt on. We're good to go. All right, so we're just taking it out on the road here. Pull out into traffic. So we're just buzzing along here. I mean, it actually feels relatively normal. I thought with the horsepower figure, I mean, it's around 220 horsepower. I thought it would be lacking, but the thing is the torque. That's actually a decent amount of torque, and even though it's all-wheel drive, there's actually not that much of a parasitic loss. I mean, I looked under the car. It's a relatively small differential, so really interesting to see what it's going to be like acceleration wise. So we're just up here at the stoplight, and we have these paddles that aren't mounted on the steering wheel. This is really nice for one of 2 reasons. When you're turning, you won't have to sort of move your hands around the steering wheel to try and find where the plus and minus paddles are. They're mounted on the actual steering column of the steering wheel, so that's really nice. That's something you don't see on an SUV of all things. All right, so we're gonna use the paddles here. It actually lets you control when you want to shift. Shifted right there when I wanted. Very good, actually. So that wasn't even full throttle, and I can already tell that horsepower figure and torque figure is definitely underrated. You know, it's only a 3-liter V6, but I have to say these figures are definitely underrated. All right, so we're pulling up to a stop sign, and it lets you downshift. Okay, here we go. Wow. control. Yeah, third and fourth are really long gears. That's actually really surprising how long they are. I mean, this is supposed to be, you know, more towards fuel economy with still having the grunt to pull the SUV, but it's actually really surprising. And again, we have the all-wheel drive system, so we're gonna see how it does. We'll floor it around the corner here or something. So it's a relatively steep angle corner, so. Very little slip. I did notice there was a little bit up front. That is partially due to the split. There's less parasitic loss when more of the torque is put through the front wheels, obviously. And again, this is an all-wheel drive setup, so we'd definitely see better acceleration with that torque split. And it's actually really interesting because I can feel the cam come on at around 5,000 RPM. But anyway, we're just gonna get into it here. Gonna roll into it. Here we go. That's way, way, way underrated. And it's all-wheel drive. That's actually really, really unbelievable that it's able to accelerate that. It's not fast, but that doesn't matter. I mean, the person buying this car isn't going to be buying it for mid-range power or anything like that, but it's really surprising. And when you're not monkeying about on the road, you can really appreciate, you know, some of the quality features you actually have in here. And it's really nice because, you know, for a car at this price point, you know, you think, okay, you know, I'm not really getting that much, but I mean, you have pretty much all the functions that, or basic functions that you would want in an SUV. After all, this isn't a family SUV, so. And again, it gives you absolutely complete control, but I don't know if you notice here, it won't let you shift down. It'll give you a little beep. It sounds like the microwave. Man, this motor absolutely sings. It's underpowered, obviously, but I mean, it totally changes the dynamic of the vehicle. How is it able to sound like this? How does it pull like this? How do I feel the torque like this? I mean, this is the time when, you know, camshaft crossovers in the, you know, the 90s were really aggressive and not smoothed out. It's really interesting to see, you know, how aggressive the camshaft is in here. I mean, that's probably because they want to have better fuel economy. That way they keep it relatively up high. I mean, this is a relatively, you know, medium revving V6 engine, but other than that, it's fairly usable. Going to be using it like, you know, a little run around get about car, but I mean, it's actually really amazing because the power is there. You have seating for 7. I mean, you have a relatively good amount of ground clearance because that all-wheel drive system was meant for off-road. You can really use it to go pretty much anywhere, which is really nice because, I mean, not many cars have all this technology, the features, especially the power plant and the all-wheel drive system for under $30,000. It's really a marvel that Mitsubishi has been able to cram this much of anything, well, into the price. But yeah, nonetheless, it's a very interesting car, and you probably won't be seeing too many of these around anymore because the new generation is coming out in 2021. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I had an absolute blast getting to drive this car, check it out inside and out. I hope to see you guys all here very soon in the next video. See ya.